Josh Clinton, thank you very much for carving time out today. It's a Friday, day after actually the Memorial D-Day, which is June 6th, which was yesterday. I'll tell you, I took my daughter to Paris last year for her. She wanted to go for her senior trip, she and I. And she said she wanted to go to Paris. I said, sure, no problem. I'm a history guy, by the way, right? And I love our country. So I said, we could do whatever you want. I need one day. I need to go to Normandy. I need to go to the beaches of Normandy. I just need to go see, what this was all about. So we took this big 1 day tour, probably one of the most amazing things I ever did, because we've all seen Saving Private Ryan,
Yeah, oh
right? I
yeah.
think everybody's seen that movie, and that introduction to that movie, which is so ridiculously powerful. I think what people fail to realize is in the movie, it looks like these guys are hundreds upon hundreds of yards away, like you know, half a mile, quarter mile type of stuff. And it isn't. Where the beach is and where they were being landed on the water was 300 yards. I mean, they were literally on top. And by the way, they weren't shooting down from these cliffs way up in the hills. These cliffs were it was 20 feet off the ground. Was so unbelievable. When I got off, I remember pausing for a moment, and these men that sacrifice their lives are 18 and 19 years old. And there I am with my 18-year-old daughter, right? And I'm like, they were her age when they went to go fight for our freedoms and protect our country. Pretty powerful, and really amazing. And usually on that day, I set a little aside to reflect, and it was really neat being there. And I sifted through my pictures, and we spent the whole day there. From the cemetery to going through the history stuff and everything. And it was just kind of amazing. So usually I don't start these conversations off like that, but it just clicked that, hey, by the way, there's so much stuff had been posted yesterday, about the anniversary of D-Day. So I thought I'd open it with that. But anyhow, with all that fun stuff being said, go ahead, Josh. You want to say something?
Oh no, it's very much unreal what our country has went through over the years and the people that stood for our country. I'm very thankful for our military.
Yes, as am I. You and I get to do this without fear of having bombs blow up on our homes or on our businesses because of the sacrifices these guys make. It doesn't work like this in other parts of the world, by the way, at all.
And it's happening right now around the world.
Yep, all over the place.
Yep.
So, hopefully, stronger leadership will prevail, and we'll get the world moved back in the right direction.
Yeah.
We shall see. So, thank you, by the way, for coming on to the show. So, I think the best way to start is really, give me a little history. How did you get into the trades? Give me the build up on how you got involved in the trades and kind of how one thing led to another. Because the reason why I ask this is everybody's story is different, but man, when you hear enough of them, and I'm not discounting it, everybody, they went through this point in time. They had worked their ass off. There was a struggle. I wanted to quit. I was done. I was moving on. I redug back in and moved forward for some success. So tell me about you.
So actually my grandfather was a sheet metal man, just tin knocker, I guess you'd say. I mean, commercial. He was, and my dad was, and then I'd been around it some. So as growing up, we actually was I lived on a farm. We raised tobacco. That was the cash crop in North Carolina at the time.
Sure.
So it was work, and so I knew what work was. If anybody's ever lived on a farm, it's
Or
work.
crazy. Right.
But anyway, so that's what they done for extra money. But every now and then somebody would come around and need a house done or something, like a new construction house and my dad would do it and I'd help and I hated it. And so as I got older in high school, they had a welding class. It was like a 3-hour class. I took welding. I loved it. I mean, I absolutely loved welding and was pretty good at it. And so it cut time to graduate high school. I didn't want to go to a 4-year college. 4-year college, I didn't feel like was for me. Um, I was going to go to the vocational or the local community college, and my mom, she just wanted me to take business. I mean, that's all she wanted. And I got up, and that was before online sign-ups, and you had to go up there and stand in line, and you had this catalog, and I stood in line, and I had that catalog, and I'm like, I do not want to do business. I was like, I did not want to do it. Looking back, my mom knew a little bit of something, I should have. But I just stood there, and I'm like, I do not want it. So I signed up for welding. I come home, my mom cried. She didn't want me to do welding. My dad had been in construction commercial HVAC, which he was a duck man, um, but there is you're around pipe fitters all the time. So my dad finally just set me down and he said, "Son, you can do whatever you want." But he said, "I've never seen a pipe fitter that didn't have, a bad back or hurt eyes or stuff like that." He's like, "You just really need to think about it." And I'm not a real big guy anyway. So he's like, "You need to really think about that." And I did, and I just started flipping through that catalog, and there was HVAC, and I'm like, man, I mean, I'd done it, and I was like, I asked him about it. He said, if you do it, he said, go into service. He said, don't be a duck guy like me. And so I signed up and went to the local community college, and just got out, got a job with a commercial controls contractor. I done that, and then I got a job with the local county government, and I worked there for 11 years. And with working with the county government, the one thing that they always told us was, I don't think it was purposeful, but like you got great benefits, and we did have great benefits. I mean, you
Yep.
had great insurance. You can't get this anywhere else, and you kind of feel after a while, you kind of felt trapped. Like you can't do this and you can't do that because you'll lose your benefits or you'll lose this and lose that. And so I got married in that time, and my wife we'd had our first child as a little girl, and then she was pregnant again, and we had decided for her to stay home, and she was staying home with our kids. And man, I just wasn't making no money, and I was working on the side and trying to just get by. And the one thing about me, Brian, I'll just go ahead and tell you, I'm a Christian. That's my faith, and I believe in that very much so. And me and my wife had prayed about it, and we just felt like that was the Lord was just calling us to go to business for myself. And so I'd done a few side jobs, and I'd saved up enough. Of course, I had my tools. Of course, everybody does a little side work, and I had my tools, and I bought a van, and I paid. This was in 2014. I paid like $6,500 for a van, so you can imagine what that van looked like.
Right.
So I bought a van, but that's all we could afford. I mean, I was just doing what I could do, and I turned in my notice, and everybody's like, "You're crazy. You're look what you're leaving, these benefits." And like, but I will say my mom and dad and my wife's mom and dad, they was like, you'll be okay, I believe. And I told my wife, I said, the worst thing that can happen is I have to go to work somewhere. It fails and I have to go to work. And so I quit. I quit in June. Which I done that strategically, kind of, it's kind of warmer, so
Sure.
hopefully more work out there. I had one service call and one change out. That's all I had, and I worked every day. I done that change out and that service call. I was by myself.
Oh, yeah.
Um, I'd done that, but I worked every day after that. I done some things, like I mean, I went to. Work for a plumber for a week or two, help them, just to make money. Here we are. I mean, my wife's pregnant, I've got a child, and here I am. But it took I'd say about 3 or 4 months, and I would do work all along, and then my work just really started coming in. Um, and I grew from there. I didn't know anything about business. I was totally lost. I went, and after the first year, my dad, I was like, he's a commercial project manager at a big company in town. I mean, he'd run $9-10 million mechanical jobs. And I was like, you need to come to work with me. He was burnt out. I was like, just come on, and I talked him into coming. I already had a helper for me, and so we just worked from there, and we started hiring, and I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And we was heavily new construction in the beginning, and after a while, I just got to kind of, you hear the guys at the parts house, those service agreements, you shouldn't sell service agreements. That's ripping the customer off. And of course, I didn't do that in the beginning. And after I got into it, I'm like, I started looking at these bigger companies. I'm like, what are they doing to make money? Like how are they making money? So I just started watching, and so I started doing those things, and I finally got some guys working, and we just grew from there and started mimicking some of the things the bigger company was doing. I mean, they're making money for a reason, you know. It's kind of the way I seen it, and I got to notice, and I was like, man, there's no way I'm making money in service, you know. Like, you know, it just didn't feel like I was doing time and material, and like I'm like people are fussing over the bill, saying you're there too long, you know, the way the whole thing goes, and
Hmm.
so, and everybody's like, you know, you hear the guys at the parts house, that flat rate is overrated and da 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 and all that jazz. And I finally was like, you know what, I'm gonna do flat rate. So I started in flat rate and I started making a little bit more money, I noticed. And then I had less pushback from the customers. And so I done that, but then I switched my flat rate. And then I got with a company in their flat rate, and man, they done a lot of training. They a lot of like business stuff. And I started going to that. And then this time I'd switched to an American Standard distributor. We sell American Standard equipment. And they really started like telling me, like, you got to work on your business, you know. And I'm like, well, how do I do that? Well, they give you these classes, and I start learning about business at that point. And because I don't really know anything, I just knew I had money in the bank account, you know, kept having
Right.
money in the bank
Right.
account. So after I'd worked on my business a while, I really grew. I started really growing, and I started making some money, but it just felt like it wasn't where it should be. And finally, that they kept pushing. It's BDR. I mean, it's a best practice group. I mean, you know,
Yep.
there's Nexstar, there's BDR, there's a few of them. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. So I talked to BDR, and they're like, you got to get your financials in order. And I'm like, okay, are they not? I didn't have a clue. I didn't know what a profit and loss statement was, or you know, I didn't your balance sheet. I mean, I'm just a service tech here, and so we get our. They taught me into going with the accounting piece of BDR. I done both the coaching and the accounting piece, and they came in and they started showing me like, and I started saying, hey, I'm losing money like here and here. And when I seen I was losing money, where I was losing money, I was able to focus on that. And I also started seeing, hey, I'd already noticed the new construction just didn't cut it. You know, we kept it. We didn't do new construction like track home stuff, but we done new construction like small spec homes and bigger custom homes. So we was making money on it, but it just wasn't like the add-on replacement. And everybody knows add-on replacement is just where it's at. So I started transitioning crews into add-on replacement. And then I signed on BDR, and I mean, we just exploded. I mean, it was just like for us, you know, from starting from nothing to where we was then, it was like, I mean, we was just rocking it. And BDR helped me get my financials in order. I was able to see where I was making money, where I was losing money, and we just turned the where we was losing money into. We had one department we estimated we lost one year like $80,000, and I'm like, you know, if I could just break even, that's 80,000 positive, more than we made the year before. But I was like, but if I could make 80 more thousand, that's $160,000 in that one department. So we turned it around. We started making money, um, and uh, we just started making money. We finally figured out after all those years of being in business. I mean, I'm talking like I've been in business. It wasn't tons of years, but I mean, let's say I was in business like 8 years, and it was just like bam, the light switch came on, and I figured out how to make money. And so we started making money, and then there was a competitor in town. They sold, and I was like, huh. And you know, I just kind of um, heard everything about it. And after about 6 months, I got thinking about it one day, and I was like, I wonder what that would be like for me. You know,
Right.
like if I sold. The whole thing I wanted to do is I wanted to turn it over to my kids one day. But they was somebody, and I think it was my BDR coach. He said your business will sell one day, whether you sell it, your kids sell it, or it'll close. Well, something's going to happen to your business one day. And I came back and I talked to my wife, and my kids are young. I mean, my oldest is 11. And I told her, I said, what if they don't want it? I mean, what if they don't want it? And I was like, if they don't want it, I've kept it all this time for them. And I told her, I said, we're going to do what's good for us, and our kids will make their way. And if I'm there to help them, I'll help them. I mean, all that. So I called somebody that knew a little bit about the acquisitions market, and I just kind of explained to them my business, and they was like, I believe, this is where you would be at. So I was like, okay, that sounds good. So I liked what they said, and at that time, I knew a couple of people, so I contacted a couple of companies, and I seen real quick like my financials was in pretty good order, but I seen real quick like I didn't know the market. I didn't understand what I was getting into. They start asking questions. They start wanting this information. I was able to get it to them, but then they start they I felt like they knew that I didn't know what I was doing, and they
Oh
probably
yeah.
did. I mean, they did. So it was like you could kind of feel like it was like the sharks circling the prey out in the ocean there. I mean, I felt like this lone guy out there. And so my BDR coach, I'm like, who do I need to talk to? I think I need somebody to help, and he recommended SF&P, and so I called, it was you actually. I called, and I don't forget the conversation. I called, left a message. It wasn't just a little bit. You called back. I explained my company a little bit, and you're like, okay, we need to do this, and this. I mean, it was a very streamlined process. Y'all got with it, and then I started working with. We done kind of a overview and the evaluation. You kind of give me an evaluation, like a high end evaluation. This is what we think. If we can get to this, I had a bad month on the books, and then said if we can get that bad month off the books and get to here, we think we can do this. And I was like, that's what we need to do. We just waited. It wasn't long. It was like 5 months. I had to get that month took off the books, and we went through that, and we got that bad month off the books, and we had a good month across from it. And in that time, I worked with the accounting part of SF&P, and they really just they helped me understand the process, understand they knew the questions that was going to be asked during during all this and this process, and knew they looked through my financials. If there was anything questionable, they was like, what's this, and of course I knew what it would be, and because I was able to speak to all my numbers, I knew everything that went on in the business, and they was like, okay, that's good, and they made all the notes, and sure enough, when we went to market and we had people come, they had those exact questions, but we already had those questions answered. And man, it was pretty smooth. And I really believe that it really upped my evaluation by having all that in order. I think we just really went to market strong. It was a good time. It was perfect timing in my opinion. And we just went to market strong, and then we partnered with a good partner, and they've been good to my team, and they've done exactly what they said they was going to do. They didn't. They promised a lot, no changes really, except some better benefits, and they did that for the team, and everything's still running as normal. So that's kind
Obviously, I'm happy to hear that.
of yeah, and I was too. I mean, and the guys are. I mean, naturally, it was kind of I know some people tell this up front, some people tell it in the
Hmm.
hindsight. I didn't tell it up front. It was a shock to some of the guys, and they was but I just set them all down individually and talked to them, and I'm like, I said, give them a chance, where you go. I mean, we all know today you can go get a job anywhere. That's just fact. I
Yep.
mean, these guys
Yep.
can move, and I said, if they're not going to change it and you like it here now, give them a chance, and if you don't, I mean, you have that option, and so they all pretty much stayed. I mean, we had a couple leave, but I think that was coming here and there anyway. You always have turnover. That's just life,
Hmm.
but they all stayed, and it all worked out really well. I think they've got some better benefits, a little better vacation. I wasn't able to offer real good insurance. They've got a better insurance. I mean, it's worked out good for them.
Which is what I actually tell a lot of owners that are looking to sell, and they want to say, "Wow, I mean, what's this all going to look like post transaction? They're going to blow up my business." Most of the deals are partnership deals like yours. They're partnering with the owner for growth. You now get a sophisticated partner that has your backside covered, right? So that you can go do all the things in the business you love to do, and they're there to help support the growth. And oftentimes that means bringing in some better things for the employees than you were able to put together for them from before. It's just economies of scale. It's not a knock on the business. But listen, if you're a $500 million portfolio, I'd like to believe that your employees through the portfolio are going to have way better insurance and benefits and all these other things than they would have had individually working for these companies before. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
very much so. And they don't want to blow the business up. I mean,
Mm-mm.
they want it to grow. I mean, that's they wouldn't be investing in these businesses if they wanted to blow them up.
Right, right. You said something that I appreciated from earlier. A couple things. We love Bruce Weissman over at BDR and his coaches over there. They're absolutely fantastic. Listen, Bruce at BDR, they have a different way of going about it, and they really drill in on some of this financial information. Um, it's impressive when we have conversations with owners that are part of BDR, in the sense that they have a very good knowledge of numbers and the importance of them. And even with all that, by the way, with all the training, everything you went through, you're still sitting here saying, hey, I don't know enough. And if I don't have the right representation, right? Listen, when you deal with private equity, these guys, they're graduating from some of the top schools, right? They know the game that needs to be played. And you're absolutely right. If they even have an inkling that you don't know everything that's going on, it's very easy for them. I hate to say the word take advantage of, but I don't know what else. There's no other phrase that comes to mind, right? Take advantage of you, and whether that's they're lowering their number here, or playing a game on EBITDA here, or giving some tax flim flam over there, whatever it is. At the end of the day, there's a line, and here's the number that is being offered to you, right? You get one opportunity to do this deal, you might as well do it right. By the way, for most owners don't realize this, I'm just going to go sell. There's hundreds of buyers out there. Don't you want to have access to the hundreds of buyers and run a true process and know what the real value of your business is? The only way
Yeah.
to do that is to have multiple offers that come in, you know?
And when I started, I did contact a few groups, but it
Mm-hmm.
was like two, okay,
Right.
versus hundreds. Like I mean, it was way more when we went through the process. Once I got with SF&P and started going through the process, I think I talked to 10 groups that was interested in us, and I'd contacted two. I mean, it was like
Yeah.
it was a
And
lot more. Yeah, and
we
I
had spoken to God knows how many on our end to whittle them down for you, to only put the ones in front of you that we thought were going to be a good fit, right? Based upon your criteria, right? And also hit the financial number that's necessary. And then it's like dating. Then you have to have some conversations back and forth and get a feel if you think you're going to be able to dance with these guys or not,
and you talk about them taking advantage. I don't think nobody was trying to take an advantage of us. I never got that in one sense, but my dad always said growing up, a lock keeps an honest man honest. And it's kind of what y'all are. You're kind of like that lock. You keep everybody honest.
Have to. It's fun. And I appreciate you said that. There's with a lot of these PE groups, they go grab guys from these best practice groups because they know a lot of people, and there's a locked in built in trust that's there already. And their hope is that, hey, they could corral these people just to their firm, to their fund, to be able to make a deal happen with that particular portfolio. One of the things I say to these owners, I said, okay, that's great. I'm thrilled that they are your friend. Let's put your friend to the test and see if they're truly paying you, right, where your business is at or not. They should be thrilled they're going to get tested. If they're that good of a friend, they should have no problem saying, yeah, go talk to some other people, and you'll see that our offer is so good, you're not going to want to do business with anybody else. And guess what happens every time that comes up? Miraculously, the friend doesn't win the deal.
Yeah.
So that can be a very expensive friendship if you don't test it, right?
Yeah. And at the end of the day, business is business and friendships are friendships, and those need to be separated, and business needs to be business. You know, that's kind of the way
Correct.
I felt about it. So,
And you had the opportunity, with your transaction in particular, right? You had all these one-on-one conversations, right? Last an hour or so, questions that move back and forth, right? It's a process. Like we'd love to tell you, here's the calendar of events and how it works. We can lay it out for you. It doesn't always work that way. Once the train gets going, it gets pretty exciting. But you said, you talk to one or two of these guys on your own, you realize that every one of these ones that you talk to individually is its own process. They're going to ask for things a certain way. The next group's asked for it a different way. The next one asks for it. The more people you want to try and handle on your own, you're running 2, 3, 4, 5 of these different processes. One of them by itself is a full-time job. Every time you do this, you bring on more and more. One of the compliments we've been given time and time again is we know all the buyers, we know how they play, right?
Yeah.
We know the information they're going to ask for. We ask for it for you up front. We want to dictate how this works, right? So when we sat down with you, we got the best understanding of your business, right? From soup to nuts on the operational side, the history, the story, who handles what, your unique selling proposition, right? Your USP, all that other stuff. When we put together that SIM, that confidential information memorandum. And then the other part of the business, obviously, is the numbers. And to that end, while all part one it means something, the numbers are the numbers, right? The numbers are the bottom line. Here are the numbers, and there is a game within a game. And you said it perfectly from before. When we take a look at these numbers, some people just say, "Hey, I'm just ready to go sell." A deal is done on your EBITDA based upon its trailing 12 months. That means today going back 12 months. So if you see in the future, hey, there's some numbers that, going by, if you go back, 12, 13, 14 months ago, whatever the number is, and see some numbers that are going to fall off, or maybe your last year, hey, if I stay on for, move this forward a couple more months, some of these numbers are going to fall off. That EBITDA can jump. But the
Yeah.
challenge is, go
I
ahead.
would say it got me. I mean, I would say a good 30% more.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Just because we sat and did the work, right? We
yeah,
sat and did the work. We got patient with it. You were clear on where you were heading in, right? We all sat back, measured and monitored the numbers. As you produced, it made it much easier for us to be able to have these conversations with the buyers. So that he's moving up into the right.
and it helped me understand. I mean,
Yeah.
I understood the numbers, but y'all laid it out to where I could understand,
Well, it's important, right? A confused mind doesn't buy.
Well,
And these
and
are
and
sophisticated.
it you have to understand. You're the one that's selling. I mean, like I had to understand what was going on, you know.
I think nicely said, you needed to have the trust in somebody that had your back to be able to explain what was going on, that you said, okay, I get it. And if I don't, I'm raising my hand. I'm going to ask some more questions because I can't go do this unless I understand everything. And it's
Yeah,
a process, right? Like,
it
listen,
really
the initial conversations that we had, hey, I need a couple pieces of information just to give you an idea where things are at. Okay. If, here's a bottom where we think it is, here's a top. If we make some adjustments and work with you, maybe we can exceed what the top is. Then the next thing, it's a big dive on financial information. It's a pain in the ass. And by the way, some people are scared of doing it. They don't want to know how, I'm going to say, how good they are, or more importantly, how bad they are and how much the inefficiencies are. But my gosh, I'm not here to judge anybody, and neither is my team. I'd rather know that now and go to market next year or the following year than have you call me up and say, I'm ready to go. And I'm like, man, I wish we would have spoken, 12, 20 months ago, to, a year and a half prior, because we could have flushed all these things out. You know what I mean?
I have a good friend that owns a heating and air conditioning business pretty close to me, and he found out, of course, I mean, word gets out, and he wanted to know. He's like, "Hey, like, what does that look like for me?" And he kind of went over everything with me, and I was like, "If you're not ready right now," I was like, "You got to make a plan." I was
Mm-hmm.
like, "If it's 5 years from now, like, you need to figure out where you want to be to get what you want. Make that plan and get there." And get there, and then you're ready at that time. Have your financials in order, be, profitable, have a goal. And then if it comes quicker, fine. If it doesn't, if it's 3 to 5, 1 to 2, whatever, but you have to work towards that plan to be ready, just have the plan.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And, I tell everybody, you can never be too early calling me. What's the worst thing that happens? We're not ready.
Yeah.
Right? At least I get it. I get to know if you know your numbers, and if you don't, I got plenty of referrals for you for people to go ahead and be a fractional CFO. Listen, your numbers are what the business is about. That is what. Yes, they're buying you. Yes, they're buying your team. But you and your team have created something. It's called numbers, and that's your scorecard. And your EBIT is your ultimate scorecard, right? Your earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, amortization, and add backs. You throw that last lay on there. That's ultimately your scorecard. wouldn't you rather want to know your scorecard a year or two ahead of time before you're ready to go to see what adjustments needed to be made? It just
Yeah.
seems to make sense. If not, then you're flying blind. What's the point?
And they all ask me, everybody I've talked to, I'm like, what would you recommend? And there's a couple of things I recommend. I'm like, get a good somebody to represent you.
Hmm.
I think SF&P done me great.
Thank you.
Get a good lawyer. That was one thing SF&P recommended, was a good lawyer, and that was great. I was like, that's what you want, and you got to know your numbers. And they're like, what did SF&P do for you? And the biggest way I knew how to explain it was, I said, it's your business when you go to put it out there. I said, it's listed like the way y'all do everything. It's like a big real estate listing. It's like you put it, they put an overview of your business. It's a real estate, it's like a real estate listing nearly. It's more involved, but that's the only way I know how to like
Sure.
compare it. It's like a big real estate listing, and they put it out there, and everybody else goes on all these acquisition groups get on that MLS, which is
Right.
but it's not. I know it's not. I know y'all send it
Right.
out, but it's like everybody's seeing it, just like on MLS. And then you have some people that want to do a walkthrough. That's when we do the meetings, and some people just browse over it and say, "Nah, I don't really like that," or I just that's not my what we're looking for in our group. And then you start narrowing those down, and then SF&P is the real estate agent. They talk and they say, "Well, here's what they're about," and then some say, "Well, I really like that. I want to talk to them," and then some's like, "Well, that's not for us," and even I'm pretty sure with SF&P, I had a couple of people. They're like, "Yeah, I know the conversations. I remember it. Yeah, we've got so many a group here looking at it, but they're not for you. You don't want to deal with them, or they're not really that serious. They're not going to pay what you want for your evaluation. You can get more. So
I appreciate that. Yeah, listen, we work our asses off. We just actually this week we just crossed the $3.3 billion in transactions sold. So obviously we're very happy about that this year. Another exciting year. We're in election year. It'll get interesting towards the back half of the year, and then everybody will get back into the first quarter next year, guns blazing, ready to make some stuff happen. But you had brought something up before, and this has come up time and time again with kids in the business. And again, your kids are younger, so it wasn't even really that big of a thing. You were going to have to wait. It was going to be a 10-year process before your kids were going to decide to get into the business, or at least you get them in far enough where they could start doing some things a little bit differently. I have this conversation with owners all the time because they have, oh, well, I'm going to just give it to my kids. And I'm like, okay, like, I don't know whether it's an ego play or it feels sounds so great to say the kids are part of the business, but you built the business. You went through certain things a certain way in a certain learning curve. And there's this disconnect that because what you went through thinks that it's going to get transferred through osmosis to your kids and they're going to be able to handle things the same exact way. So I say to these owners, I said, do you really want to sell the business, or do you really want your kids to take it over so they can always be calling dad when there's a problem? You really still want to be involved. Because if you really want to do a deal, you're doing this from a business perspective, oftentimes the kids cannot handle things the way that you could. So there's ways, by the way, even if your kid's in the business, where stock can be set aside, where they are repartnered on a smaller scale with private equity, but you who took all the risks and did all the work, you're going to get your payday. So I said, nicely said, Mr. Owner, get your payday. I said,
yeah,
you want to leave something to your kids? I said, I don't know how many kids you have. Everybody has their different things. I said, but you got a will and you're going to put stuff together, and someday you're going to move on and you're going to keep leaving very nicely. In the meantime, they're going to have a job with an employment agreement with the PE group. They're going to have stock. Let them go work their ass off. And when the portfolio flips, they're going to get their payday. Let them go earn it too. Won't you have a different level of respect for them when they've done that? And it gets very quiet and they're like, yeah, I never saw it that way. Because go
well,
ahead.
we know that if you've started a business from ground up, I don't care what it is. I mean, I look at all types of businesses anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I go out and eat, and I'm like, how do they make money here? Like
Right.
that's
The same thing.
I mean, it's blood, sweat, and tears. I mean, it's
Hmm.
hard. I mean, it don't come easy to begin with. Um, it's if you start from the ground up, it's not easy to begin with. But as time goes, it does get easier and you become more accustomed to it, but at the beginning, it's not easy.
Sure,
Not easy.
and some
I mean, you
well that
have,
toughens you up, right? That builds your fortitude, that builds that muscle. What's that saying? Hard times build strong men.
yeah,
Or strong men make easy times, and easy time make for weak men. So part of the problem is the kids come into the business. They are not wired the same way as you are. They didn't have to say, I can't make payroll Friday. I got to make some shit happen this week to keep my employees. They never went through that grind where they're up all night and doing these things. They didn't have to suffer the same way for it, right? There was a story a life coach told to me, and I think this sums it up pretty nicely. Guy was in Central Park, right? Sees a butterfly trying to struggle to get out of its cocoon. Picks up the cocoon, tears it open, puts a butterfly in its hand. Butterfly walks off the end of its hand, falls right to the ground and dies in the fall, right? Because the reality is the butterfly gets its strength through the struggle of breaking through the cocoon. That's how it strengthens its wings. And when it's able to get out of that, the wings are strong enough for it to be able to fly.
yeah,
It's kind of the same thing, right? So the strength sometimes is in the struggle. So when you don't allow the kids to go ahead and struggle through the business and you hand them everything on a platter and say, here, go ahead and run with it, the results are not always what's going to be expected. And I've heard the horror stories on the other side where and the kids take over, they're paying the parent back through some type of an annuity situation. They took a loan or whatever it is, and things are great, so it looks easy. And then they hit up against some hard times and they're asking dad to get back involved in the business. Well, dad's retired, doesn't want to be back involved in the business, but he has to because now we've got to protect his investment. The investment is the kids that are paying him back because he never did a deal, never got his big payday. The kids were going to be able to run the business for the next 10, 15, 20 years. What did that look like? So gets a
and
little bit interesting. So food for
I
thought.
was to the point though that my kids are younger. I don't even know if they want to do anything with it.
Right. Right.
And they're their own people at the end of the day. I want them to be their own person. I want them to make their way. I mean, if they come up and they want to do heating and air conditioning in 10 years, start a business. I'm their daddy, and
Yep.
I'll be there for them, and I'd help them. I mean, I've learned a lot through this process, um, but that they may want to be something else. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, yes. And in that same thought, we did a transaction for a gentleman who's become a good buddy of mine, right? And almost a quasi mentor. And I love him, Lou Habaika, who's out in Phoenix, Arizona. Lou has 3 sons. And for any of you listening that know Lou, maybe have young kids, call him and ask for his outline on how he raised his children. I sat there over breakfast for hours. Listen, I'm a talker, man. I don't think I said a word for 3 hours. I could not believe what he had shared with me. It was absolutely incredible how he raised his kids and how they were all on the same page. Really impressive. But his son works with him. And his son, Andy, is an absolutely incredible salesperson. But Andy didn't want to run a business. You know what I mean? So sometimes you're shoehorning your kid into a position that they didn't want. Guess what? Lou did his deal. Andy's still doing sales. He's doing absolutely incredible and couldn't be happier. Why do you want to put somebody in a position they're not going to prosper in? You know what I
And
mean?
and if they don't want to do it and they still do it, it's not the right. It just don't work. I would think. I mean, somebody that you've got to have a heart to run
Labor,
it.
a labor for the love. What's a love for the labor, or whatever, the labor of love, or whatever, right?
You've got to have it. I mean, you got to have it. I mean, because it just times it's easy and at times it's hard. I mean, that's just life. Life's that way all the way around, and you better like what you do.
If not, it gets very challenging very quickly. I couldn't
But
agree more. Um, so now you're on the other side post transaction, right? I've heard you said you're incredibly happy with your partner. You're happy with the choice that you made. You're happy with the way they treated your employees. You brought in one little nugget, which was, hey, at the transaction, some people left. And I hear them, you know, it's not, and I, by the way, appreciate how you sat down with everybody and said, hey, give these guys a chance, right? If I believed in them and you believed in me, then let's see where this goes. Let's give it some time to see how it plays out. Nothing really major changes. Usually, oftentimes, a lot of things get better. But I've heard this before. And one of the things I've always said to owners is, you're right, you're going to lose some people. And chances are you probably should have let them go from before. These are the ones that realize that they may be held accountable a little bit differently than they were previously, right? They were able to skate by. They're not going to be able to skate by anymore. It's a business, you know?
Yeah, I never will forget. I had a guy working for me early on, and he was one of the first guys, like lead guys I had working for me, and I hired him, and he was great until he wasn't, and then like he was like back and forth type deal. And I went to one of those seminars through that flat rate company we used, and one of the talking points in it was how to hire, how to fire, and when to retain, how to retain employees. And as I'm sitting there, me and my wife done a lot together in the business, and we're sitting there and we're looking at each other and we're like, it's that guy, he's got to go.
Hmm.
And I'd held on to him way too long. I just didn't think I could replace him. I let him go. I'll come straight home. Drove straight home. Next morning we went. I let him go. We had a few different things to get done. We dug in and got them done, and I got somebody else. Best move I ever made in my business, and I was like, I thought to myself, I will never let anyone hold me hostage in my own business because that's what I was letting him do essentially. And that's just the way it is. One person doesn't stop the show. I
Uh,
mean, if you lose one guy, you're not. It's not over. Like maybe you have to step back, work just a little bit until you can get it replaced, and then step back forward. But it's not the end of the world. One
at
person.
all. And other people step up. Now there's a opportunity for other people to be able to step up, do some stuff. Listen, before I got in this for years, I was a business owner. And I remember at the time I was married and I was bitching about somebody, right? And I was like, that's like 3 times this week you have bitched about the same person, basically. And I started putting this new law into effect for me, this new rule. If I bitch about somebody that many times, they got to go. Whatever the number is, right? I think the number I got to was like, if it was like 3 times in a month, I think that was like, that's where it boiled down to. Like, I got to be done with this person. It's too much. They got to be replaced. But it's hard. I mean, listen, in the space we all play in now, finding employees is not easy. Getting them trained up to speed on your system, in your culture, and what you want to do is not easy. And losing somebody, man, you're right. It could be a step back. But if you're always hiring, treating your people right, they're bringing people to you. You should never be at an end. You should never be caught in that position. You know.
Yeah, and I will say with the acquisition and bringing on the larger corporate with it, we did lose a few people, but I wasn't out doing the Indeed and the ZipRecruiter and all this stuff. They just was sending me resumes like here, 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 and like,
Ah,
man, that was a lift off my shoulders. Like I was doing all that, and so it lifted that off of me. And I'm just looking through resumes at this point, and I'm like, okay, we'll interview these people. So that did help. I mean, that's the one thing that the acquisition did bring was a lot of relief on the management end, as far as like everything, like the hiring. I mean, find it HR. I mean, I didn't have to keep up with all your documents and all that. I mean, I have a little bit of a support there with that.
and every new law and every OSHA change and every
Uh,
right
I
that
mean,
here's a
like,
notice that you're supposed to read and sign off and retrain everybody. Right.
yeah, I mean, like we got a notice back of this that something was changing with I don't know, with unem unemployment insurance or something like that. It came in. The fellow that does our accounting, internal accounting, he brought it to me. He's like, "What's this mean?" I, s- I don't know. I've done it through the scanner and hit forward and was like, there you go. I mean, they figured
Right.
it out. I mean, it wasn't on me to figure out where I'd have been making phone calls and just scanned it and sent it on and was like, what do we got to do? Y'all tell us what we're going to have to do here.
You
Which,
you bring up a really good point, right? With the right partner, it is a partnership and part of going through the process is saying, listen, here are you know your list of needs of what it's going to take you to get from where you are to grow you, right? Whatever that looks like. Hey, I need this person, I need support. The 3 to 5 things that those things were taken care of to could free you up. The sky's the limit. The right partnership, when you talk with these guys, and this is our whole point is it's almost like a matchmaker, right? I want you to have all these conversations with the potential buyers. When you're sitting kneecap to kneecap with them in these management meetings, you're sharing, hey, these are the things that I think that I need. And they're telling you whether or not they can support that. And if they can support what you feel is necessary for your business to go to the next level, just like all of what you just talked about, it frees you up like it's nobody's business. I've spoken to owners post transaction, and they are shocked how much they grow after the transaction. And they say, by the way, they're like, oh, I mean, I could have done this. No, you couldn't have. You know why you couldn't have? Because you're thinking with your bank account and the mistakes that are made and everything that happens. When it's not your bank account, and when you lose somebody, they're able to be replaced, and HR is covered, and the bookkeeping and the CFO stuff is done, and they're handing you the numbers, and you're going through them, like the amount of not just time that it takes off your, the time of bullshit, and it's not bullshit, by the way, it really has to get done, but that stuff can be so time demanding, and it steals time away from all the other great things that you could do. When you have somebody that can handle all that, you have the trust because you're all rowing in the same direction. It enables you to be great in the areas that you're great in. This is what you're talking about right now.
So I will say when I first talked to BDR, there's walls of business, like certain, and they know they've got this down. They was very good about, and they showed me these walls in business. Like you hit these, you're doing great, 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 and you get to this revenue mark, and you're against a wall. It takes
Yep.
so much money to grow, and
Yep.
like they showed that to me. I seen every wall I'd ever hit, and I understood it, and I was like, wow, you're right, and I was a little bit off from a wall when I first started with them, but I was like, man, I'm approaching that fast, and they had ways to get me beyond that, and to help, and so when I got ready for the acquisition to go to market, I was bumping that wall. I mean, I was up against that wall, and I knew at that point that if I grew any more, it was going to cost me X amount of money and reduce my profit at that point.
Right.
And now, once I got past that wall, for a year, it's going to do that. But once I got past that wall, I mean, I would have made more. Don't get me wrong. I would have been bigger and larger and made more. But like it's just those things. If you know your numbers, you can get up against a wall, and that's when you can go to market if you want to.
So, in closing, one nugget for anybody listening. What would you say?
Uh, don't be scared of staying in the business or exiting. Don't be scared of exiting because eventually you're going to have to exit sometime. It's now, later, but plan for that exit. Be ready. Like don't be. I've got friends. A guy I worked for, and he's up against that right now. I mean, he's getting closer to 60, and I told him, I said, get you a plan, get it together, because he doesn't have kids that want to keep it. And get ready. Don't get caught by surprise. Be ready. If you want to pass it on to your kids, it'll be great for them. If not, be ready. Don't let it slip up on you.
Well, I appreciate that. Yep, you're absolutely right. You got to make a plan for it. Josh, thank you very much for your time today. I appreciate it. I know you got weekends coming up and all kinds of fun stuff to do with the family. And I appreciate you carving the time out for us today.
Yes, sir.